These 5 correspond to nature. So it's fire, earth, metal, water, and wood. And they represent all of the adaptive qualities in the mind and body and spirit. While we all have all these 5 elements within us, we have one element that is our Achilles heel. What happened to me when I found out that my primary element was fire, I had a way to depersonalize this body, this mind, this experience, this behavior and patterns. And in that space, all of a sudden, there was tremendous relief. I stopped having to fix things, figure it out, play over and over and over what went wrong in something. It gave me an opportunity, a map of myself to say, oh, my primary is fire. I'm at risk for thinking that everyone needs to be happy. It liberated me. Like, people want these big, magnanimous things to change, and they believe that a spiritual awakening is this huge thing. The diamonds are in the tiny moments every day when you pull back from having a big reaction, where you just stay still instead of pushing. You have so much more space open up because you're not having these big reactions. Then all of a sudden the world like things just one day you wake up and you're like, wait a minute, so much beauty is here.
Welcome back to the Humankinder podcast. It is so strange to be a human. Our life is such a mystery. The mystery of this cosmos that we're in. The mystery of the rich, vast inner landscape that we inhabit. We know almost nothing about this strange reality. And yet, for generations, we have been mapping it. There are ancient methods, techniques, and ancient masters who have spent their entire lives making sense of this wild ride that we're on. And they've left us maps. One of those beautiful maps is the 5 elements of traditional Chinese medicine. And it's really beautiful that we can use these ideas to enhance our lives and to live in alignment with our true nature. And my guest today has gone back into these ancient practices and extracted a modern method called the 5 archetypes, which she uses to help people make sense of their own inner worlds, to really enhance their relationships and align their lives with what really, truly lights them up. She's written a beautiful book called The 5 Archetypes. Carrie Davidson, welcome to the show.
Oh my gosh, that was so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. And I have to say, a podcast named, Humankinder, it's the right time. We need that. We just need that. And so thank you for creating this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for being a part of it. And I couldn't help but notice as I read the intro of your book that you reference a number of times this mysterious force that seems to guide human growth and development, almost like a natural law that runs through life. What is this force you're pointing to, and how did you come to recognize it in your own life?
Well, it's interesting when you ask that. A few different forces come to mind. I'll start with the forces of the 5 elements of Chinese medicine and how I came to that. I think before I found the 5 elements in Chinese medicine, I was a seeker. I felt like there wasn't a map to life. I felt like I was very pulled by circumstances and problems and whatever was happening, whatever was painful, I would try to fix that thing so I didn't have to feel pain anymore. But I didn't I don't know, I didn't find an answer for, well, shouldn't there be something underneath all of that we can do? And I just, I wasn't finding it. And when I learned about the 5 elements, I understood that according to this ancient Chinese medicine philosophy, these 5 elements represent 5 forces of movements that one flows into another to create movement, healthy movement in the face of chaos. And so, what my teachers explained to me is that it's one way to look at it is this is how we understand nature. Carbon-based life in this planet all moves according to this system. So it's the system of um, the seasons. So it's summer, fall, winter, spring, and it's how a seed turns into a plant. It's how a baby gets conceived and then it bursts out into the world. And it's human development across time. It's just how things grow in the face of chaos and change. And so it's an invisible force of movement because we don't think about, oh, what do I have to do to make summer come? It's just the invisible force of the change of things. And so, according to Chinese medicine, that invisible force is also we are carbon-based life. So it governs how I move through my thoughts, through my challenges, and how I can right myself in the face of challenge so that I don't create more inertia or more pain in myself and my relationships in the field.
It's just true that there are invisible forces operating on and through us, and both externally, of course, which we're mapping through physics and we're mapping through chemistry, we're mapping through all of these sciences. But we're impoverished in many ways with inner sciences to map these inner invisible forces, and it's just as rich and wild and crazy in here as it is out there. And the difference between having a map to work with that and not is really the difference in the quality of your life. And you pointed to your own experience as a seeker, and then finding something. What was that like to go from before not knowing and not understanding that to after starting to learn about these maps and start to align your life? What were some of those early experiences like for you that brought you to this?
Well, when I was first learning about the 5 elements, one of the things I learned was that while we all have all these 5 elements within us, because it's not a personality system, it's just our system. So fire corresponds to our heart, metal to our lungs. Like it's our organs also. It's how everything works. But according to Chinese medicine, we have one element that is our Achilles heel. It's our weakest link. It's the thing, it's also what comes easiest, but sometimes what comes easiest is the thing that mucks us up. so so I think what happened to me when I found out that my primary element was fire, all of a sudden I had a way to depersonalize me, this body, this mind, this experience, this behavior and patterns. And all of a sudden I said, oh, I could have space between the things in my awareness, which included my thoughts, my sensations, my feelings, my beliefs, all those things that are just moving through my awareness, and the greater me that's part of a bigger thing. And in that space, all of a sudden, there was tremendous relief. I stopped having to fix things, figure it out, you know, play over and over and over what went wrong in something. All of a sudden, it gave me an opportunity, a map of myself to say, oh, my primary is fire. I'm at risk for thinking that everyone needs to be happy. Oh, when I do that, girl, go take a walk. Like, don't sit there and double down on that.
Yeah.
And so it was just like, oh, it was a relief. It was an exhale. I felt lighter. And I had humor with myself. All of a sudden, I could laugh at myself. I could, I felt like I was an observer of myself rather than a hard and fast, wall that things were hitting and feeling. I was like, oh, watch that thought I just had. That's funny. I better not double down on that thought. So I would say it liberated me from that life of constant, oh my God, what just happened? What did I do? How did I mess that up? All that stuff. It just
Yeah.
stopped.
I'm bursting with curiosity on behalf of the listeners now, because we have to now outline these 5 archetypes and the different properties and the way they show up. And we're going to do that. And we're going to also look, I think, at one thing you shared about how to work on yourself. I think your understanding of the inner landscape and how to do the work, I can already see is so strong. And so maybe we can start there with the 5 archetypes. What are these 5 archetypes? And yeah, how do you tend to teach people who are just coming to it how to understand them?
Yeah, so these 5 correspond to nature. So it's fire, earth, metal, water, and wood. And they represent all of the adaptive qualities in the mind and body and spirit. So what's an adaptive quality? Could be, your organs, your heart, right? Your heart rate has to increase when you run so that it delivers oxygenated blood faster to the muscles that need it. So it's adapting to the environment. Your lungs, they need to breathe more air when you're running. So each of these elements represents not only your physical adaptive qualities that align with that element, but your mental adaptive qualities, social, emotional, relational, spiritual. And so each element has probably hundreds of correspondences in and of itself. But also each element has a relationship to each of the other ones. So the ones next to you in the circle, the ones next to each other, those are more soothing, and the ones across from elements are more challenging, and they can kind of they make up what life is about, which is sometimes things are easy and sometimes we need to be challenged so that we don't overdo something. So it's just like the stuff of the movement, the forces of life all together. And we are born, according to Chinese medicine, with one that's a little bit stronger than the rest. And it gives us the gift of knowing exactly what we need to grow in life. It tells us, here's what you're at, here's your work. My work as a primary fire is going to be not believing that joy and gratification is the only good outcome of every interaction, and not fearing the loss of love and the loss of connection. So that means I don't have to smile all the time. I'm at risk for smiling so much because I'm trying to control everybody's emotions from, not feeling sad or angry around me. And as soon as I know that, my whole body rearranges and I go into a state where I make everyone around me feel dignified. So it's not just a system for self. It's when I dial back my overactive primary, I create the conditions for everyone around me to feel safe and dignified and seen and heard. And I don't have to address it. Like I don't have to talk about it. Like it just rearranges and everything falls back into place. The same way, if I'm overeating, my stomach is overactive and then all my other organs have to pay for it. And so it's the same thing. The same thing's happening in my organs that's happening in my love relationships, that's happening in the organization of my file systems. Like it's just, do you want me to go through each element and tell you a little tidbit
Yeah, I
about?
think I might just summarize where we're at, because there's a learning phase here. Like I'm loading this into my mind so then we can work with it, and we can start to make some of the relationships work because they're so beautiful. And I'm imagining, right? I'm imagining a hexagon, like a circle almost, and you've got 5 points of it. So you have wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. and they're always kind of going around. There's arrows going around and pointing to each one. So there's relationships going around that. And then I'm also imagining lines going across that hexagon as they interrelate, right? And I'm imagining that inside myself, and then a strongest one that's kind of like my default. And so like that's how I'm sort of picturing it. And I love the reference that it's happening on a physical level. It's also emotional, it's also mental, it's also spiritual. So it's like when I understand my primary, then I can understand many different dimensions of myself and of others as well. And so maybe from that place we can start to go through each one, and just say what are the big things? How would I know if this was me, and what strengths would it give me, and maybe where would that potentially trip me up?
Yeah. Yeah, so that was gorgeous, by the way. Can you hang out with me and, like, just say that everywhere I go? Um, yeah, so I'll expand a little bit on fire, a little bit about it. It's the part of us that feels joy. Each one of us has a heart. We all have a heart, and, we all have joy. And when fire is your primary, you overvalue joy. And your biggest fears revolve around loss of love and loss of connection. And when you feel a loss of love and loss of connection, there's the potential for big drama over little things, like having a big explosive feeling pulsate through your body. So emotions are fire, and primary fire people feel their emotions like physical pain. The other elements, not as much when that's your primary. So earth is your stomach and spleen. Earth is about empathy, sympathy, sharing, conversation, communication, relationships. And earth's biggest fears revolve around abandonment. So they can get over addicted to being needed and appreciated for what they did. Like, come on, say thank you, like that kind of thing. Um, when your primary is metal, I mean, metal for all of us is about the lungs and the large intestine. It's about breathing. It's about organization. It's about beauty and perfection and value, being able to know what's valuable and not spend your time on stuff that isn't. When your primary is metal, you're at risk for caring too much whether other people acknowledge that you brought value. So you can get caught up in, they're not appreciating me. They're not, it's like a little bit different than earth. Earth wants a thank you. Metal wants to be acknowledged for the specific value that they brought. And their fears revolve around making mistakes. And then you have primary water. So for all of us, water is our kidneys and our bladder. It's getting good sleep. It's staying hydrated. It's peace. It's meditation. It's getting quiet. It's the capacity to not have a reaction. It's that space between the thing that's happening and me making meaning of it. When your primary is water, you're at risk for fearing being misunderstood. And in the face of being misunderstood, what water can do is over isolate. They'll disappear. They'll become overly mysterious, and people will wonder, where did they go? Then you have wood. Wood is the liver and the gallbladder. And wood is the activity of momentum, physical movement, delegation, risk taking, keeping things moving along, facing everything and avoiding nothing, even when it's hard, not giving up. And when wood is your primary, you're at risk for getting upset if people don't like your plan and having an anger reaction. Wood primaries will have a big anger reaction. So that's a little bit about each one. And we all have all of them. Like, we need all of them. They're all of our organs and our adaptive qualities. But knowing your primary tells you what to look out for, because you're at risk. That's where you're at risk for getting mucked up. And it also tells you your solution to regulating out of that. So it's a diagnostic and a curative in the same space.
Hello there. We'll get back to the conversation in just a sec.
But first, I want to share about something that's very close to my heart right now. I've been working with the Soul Alignment Method and Miles Trainer, who's been a guest on this podcast for the last number of years. And through that work, I've really learned how to uncover my own purpose, the elements of my own unique purpose blueprint, and now to help others do the same. And as part of Soul Alignment Method, the vision is a world where everyone knows who they are, why they are here, and can live it in this lifetime. This allows us to really make decisions that are in our highest alignment around career, around relationships, around lifestyle, location, and around our physical health and all the other areas of our life. I would like to offer to listeners of this podcast a completely free or donation-based initial session for 90 minutes where we go deep and draw out from within the unique elements of your soul's purpose, your purpose blueprint. If this is something that's interesting to you, you can visit my website at www.humankinder.com.au and contact me there, or go to the link tree in the description, which has all the links and my WhatsApp. And I would absolutely love to work with you on this if it feels in alignment. Thank you. And now back to the show.
Yeah, it's so much in that. And I think many people listening to this will be having all sorts of insights now about, wow, now I understand a little bit more about my parents or my friends or myself. And I see that in myself, or I see this in others. And sometimes that really irritates me, or I love that about this person. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about the self-knowledge is it allows you to accept yourself and others for the way they are, to understand, there's a beautiful phrase like, to understand all is to forgive all. And I think a lot of the times we have challenges with other people is because we simply don't understand where they're coming from. And, there are a couple of concepts in your book, one of them called optimization, the other called harmonization. And there's another concept as well called strength continuum. And so I'd love if you could keep building up the kind of the principles of the method then, so people could get a really good understanding of how to work with it in themselves.
Yeah. So this idea of optimization is meant to help us not overuse our primary. So there's this concept in Chinese medicine that, we're given this wheel, this 5 archetypes, 5 elements wheel, which according to ancient Chinese medicine is the foundational way energy moves in a healthy system. Now, they also say that the only thing that can get in the way of this healthy system moving is the human will to stay comfortable. And so for it, when you think about that from a fire perspective, so my human will, call it ego, like not my best self, me in fear, me wanting to avoid feeling uncomfortable, my fire will over-index into entertaining people so that you won't have to have an uncomfortable emotion that I have to manage. So that is the human will, the ego, trying to stay comfortable. Now, if I stay out of that garbage behavior, and if I just notice I'm about to do it, I can go back into center, into my 5 elements, and get still and quiet and just sit back and let things keep moving the way nature intended. And then I don't create a rift in the system. So it's almost, just like acupuncture is a preventative. It is sometimes used as curing problems, but its sweet spot is prevention. So is this system, this sweet spot of prevention. So how do we prevent? We optimize our primary. That means really at its simplest, we recognize what my primary is likely to say in the face of stress and just notice it. There are little daily activities that we can do to strengthen the other elements around us so that we, under stress, we use them more often than just my fire to feel better. But so those are the types of things that will optimize me from defaulting into my overactive primary. So optimization is being the best fire I
Hmm.
can be.
Okay, and so you first then, what I'm hearing is you first focus on your primary and you say, okay, um, what does this look like when it's going really well? What gifts does this bring me? What are the strengths of it? And then when I get stressed, so thinking about this stress strength spectrum, when I get stressed, what do I default to? Where does it make things more difficult for me? And then you start to look in your life and say, okay, how can I change how I respond in situations so that I'm taking the strengths and leaving the stress? Right? Is that, and so for my primary of earth, when I've done this, what is it that you already know about me, where my strengths would be, and then what my reactions would be when stressed?
So, as a primary earth, your gift to the world is empathy. You are coming out of the womb, you know how to see chaos and turn it into order. And you're good at it. You're really good at being able to not only notice like one bit of chaos and turn it into order, but you could probably see 17 things and be working on them all. And they're all at different rates of being done. And you know exactly which one needs what. And you can pull these levers and you can hold it all in your mind, in your body, in your spirit, and be amazing at it. So where, I mean, Earth, one of the things about Earth where Earth can trip up is doing too much for others and then getting annoyed that people aren't appreciative.
Yeah, it's so incredible to hear someone share something who doesn't know you, but really describe aspects of yourself that sometimes you're aware of and sometimes you're not, because that really describes my approach to not just the number of projects I get involved in, all these different things that I'm doing, but also relationships, and how, as the oldest as well in the family, I got this ability to um, have many, 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 many relationships, and always be working, always be helping, always be doing whatever it takes, and from my perspective, in order to harmonize things, and it's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting. And then,
Yeah.
like, one of the you asked me what is one thing I'd like to work on. And one of those things that I've noticed was a pattern I observed in myself, was that I would be going and doing all these things, and I would have a lot of fear around them not working. So either projects not working, or things not happening, or relationships, people not being happy with me, or something breaking down. And I actually developed this huge fear of rejection. And this fear of rejection has been motivating me a lot throughout my life. And one part of the motivation has been, I'm going to do everything perfectly so that nothing bad ever happens, and that people never reject me, and that all these projects go well. And I started to develop a lot of anger around that, actually. It's like, why do I have to do all this? Why am I like, I feel trapped. I feel weighed down by the weight of all of these relationships, these projects, and like, I can't stop. I'm under so much pressure. And then I started to get really angry and started judging people, and judging them so that if I judge them first, they can't reject me. And I would never verbalize this. But it was really strong in me, as I noticed it. And I also realized this same pattern is in my father also, right? In the way that he operates. Um, and so just in the last week or so, reflecting using your method, like, I realized there's a lot of unaddressed resentment and anger actually built up in me because of that. And actually just starting to allow that to come forward has been deeply uncomfortable, to admit that there's a part of me that's in every moment when I'm with someone just going, oh, I hate that. Like, I hate that about you. Like, I see every weakness and flaw that you have, and it just, like, there's a revulsion to it. And it, like, it was confronting at first, but very freeing to actually acknowledge. And so, like, I'm wondering, in your practice and how you help people, how would you work with me to start addressing some of that?
So with 5 archetypes, the most efficient way to give you specific guidelines would be to run this through a specific example. Because in 5 elements, it's we kind of back into the system through the details and then plug it in, rather than like in more modern systems, you can talk about like I'm avoidant, or I lack self-confidence, or I'm messy. And then they'll go right into like, well, here's what you do if you're messy. And meanwhile, I couldn't apply it to my world because I'm like, well, I'm not messy in that way. And so in Chinese medicine, just like we need to identify the one point to put the needle in, and it's tiny, we have to do that with specific when we work on the mental acupuncture, which is kind of what this is. So in order to help you the best I can, I would say, do you have an example of a time when this shows up that's pretty specific that you feel comfortable workshopping?
Yeah, something about me, I'll workshop anything. I don't have any, like, I'm here in this life to let go of it all. I'm not trying to bring anything with me. So let me an example. Here's an example I shared with my partner, and she thought it was very funny. It was like she would ask me some nights to like massage her feet or like rub her legs or do these things like help her sleep. And like always I'm like, yes, no problem, whatever. But like a part of me inside is like, I hate this. I hate this. I don't want to do this. I just want to relax myself and go to sleep, or I want to do something else. And I hate this. And like always, I just would never say it. And then I was like doing this thing where I was like, I'm just going to actually out this. And I said, I hate that you ask me to do this all the time. Like I hate it. I don't want to do it. And it felt so in contrast to my nature of being loving and sharing with her, that it was confronting, but actually very freeing. And so that was the one where I was like, there's an example of speaking it and just noticing that's there and acknowledging it.
Perfect. I love the simplicity of that example. and that it's the subtle reality of life. It's these are the moments. Okay, perfect. As a primary earth, sorry, I'm not looking at the camera. I'm looking at I doodle. So it helps me function. So as a primary earth, your gift to the world is empathy. And what you're at risk for is overcaring, overgiving. And so what will happen is earth will give sometimes for the purpose of avoiding abandonment. And sometimes the saying yes when I want to say no is just it feels like a reflex, rather than thinking through, I don't want her to leave, so I better rub her feet. So we don't always think about that. But what's underneath, what motivates the behaviors and the choices in earth can be a fear of abandonment. And so earth is at risk for overgiving and not taking care of themselves. And so a couple of quick things off the top, but I'm going to go deeper. Couple of quick things off the top for earth to prevent this. One is do something small for yourself every day. Even if it's eat your favorite piece of chocolate, even if it's give yourself a hand massage, even if it's go smell your favorite flower outside. It doesn't have to be go out and have a spa day every day. It can be something small but reserved for you, because the earth is at risk for not making sure they're okay. The second thing, and this one's a little bit harder for earth, but no is a full sentence, is really important for earth primaries. their biggest fear is abandonment. So they avoid saying no because they think that they will create conflict in the relationship, that then they're going to make a rift, cause a rift in the relationship. So there's an avoidance of saying no. But no doesn't have to be no. No could also be very loving. And no is also related to, is the wood element. And wood is a plan ahead. So wood is also the part of you that could be having dinner on Sunday night and say, I really love helping you fall asleep most nights. Some nights I feel like I just want to chill. So can we have a little signal when I'm feeling like I need to chill? And so if you say I need a foot massage, put up your left pinky. And if it's a yes for me, I'll go like this. If it's a no for me, I'll go like that back. And we don't even have to talk about it. And you'll be like, cool. I asked. He didn't have to say a word. He said, no, great. Maybe you have a sign for tomorrow night, but you kind of create this playful way of planning ahead to avoid that crunchy thing that happens in the earth mind. So those are the two ways, the two things that earth needs to do for themselves every day to avoid getting into that space in the mind. There's two more things I want to share about what happens to earth. Primary earth, they will overgive. So they'll keep giving even when inside I don't want to. And so they set themselves up for getting pissed that other people aren't sympathizing with the fact that I'm doing everything for everyone all the time. They will go into the toxic emotion of feeling disgusted about it, but the behavior display becomes over ingratiating anyway. Like, I'm going to keep doing it anyway. And the display that starts to happen is complaining. She's a jerk for asking me. He's, annoyed. I can't believe. So the complaining starts. And then the experience that everyone kind of feels, even you and the people that you're interacting with, is actually finally abandonment. Because it's no fun to get a foot rub from somebody who doesn't want to do it. And so she feels abandoned by the true heart-centered you who she knows you are. And you feel abandoned by her because she didn't sympathize with the fact that you do this all the time and sometimes you need time. So this is a earth pattern. Everyone with primary earth has the same thing happen. And the fix, one, is the no is a full sentence, but in a nice way. 2, taking care of yourself. And 3, noticing the very earliest signs that you're about to believe that she should say thank you. And stopping yourself. Go clean out a drawer. Go organize a shelf. Go wipe down the kitchen counters. That will stop the mind from going down that path. There's one more thing I'll share. So there's another pattern baked in these 5 elements, and it's a pattern of conscious transformation, like transforming consciousness immediately. And that's kind of what the ancient shamans, Chinese shamans, created it for, was to instantly let go of the things that keep us in these lower lying states. And so the steps begin with going into water, like living in the space of water day to day, which means approaching every interaction. So your partner, you walk into the room, your partner says, rub my feet, and you come in water means you're empty. Nothing ever happened. She never asked you before. You've never been pissed at her. You're just present to the current moment. Water is, oh, I'm just noticing she's asking for a foot, and there's no story comes. It's just information. So when you start on empty, you can go into fire. Fire is making a choice that has integrity. Earth is at risk for making choices that favor the relationship but give up their integrity. They get addicted to relationship. They're afraid to lose, right? To have abandonment. So they let go of the truth, which is, I'm too tired. And so if you start in water empty, she asks you for a foot rub, you go into your fire, which is how do I choose in this moment? And you have 2 choices here. One is the value of I shouldn't have to feel uncomfortable. And it's really uncomfortable to say no, so I'm going to say yes. Or the other value is, even though it feels uncomfortable to say no, it's the thing that strengthens my relationship because it has integrity. And so you do the thing that feels a little bit uncomfortable for a second, and you say, I'm really tired, sweetheart. Can we take a rain check on that? Like, can we do something else instead? Why don't we just cuddle? For now, that would be lovely for me. And being okay if she rejects you. Like letting go of needing it to be a certain way so that your earth remains in its comfort zone, which is I'm needed. If we don't do that, earth and many people, earth primaries, will boomerang back and forth between extreme earth and extreme wood and never come into this heart kidney axis, which is integrity to higher values of saying no when I really can't. So what'll happen is over ingratiation, so much that it just explodes inside you and you swing into your wood energy, which is, I'm really mad. And then you feel really bad for having gotten mad. So you swing back into earth where it goes into over ingratiation again. And it never settles. It keeps going back and forth. The only way to settle it using the Chinese medicine perspective is water, empty. Just empty all the story. It never happened. All we have is right here, right now. Like empty, empty. What choice can I make that has integrity rather than what choice keeps my earth feeling needed in a moment?
Wow.
So that's kind
Yeah,
of, yeah.
thank you so
Does
much.
that
And
land?
it's beautiful to witness somebody in their genius and on purpose, because I can tell how much it lights you up, and your gift in this space is beautiful. So it feels really nice to receive that. And so much of what you said resonated, and all of those points I can intuitively feel inside myself are useful. And I'm drawn so much to the final one, which I think is one of the beautiful things in this model, is using the other elements to balance and come into wholeness, right? Because there's a risk here I sense in going, I'm earth and I need this all the time, and you need to do this now, and you need to do this now, and I can only do this now, and I'm only okay whenever these factors exist. And what I hear you saying is actually no. It's like, as you mature in this model, there's a balancing that's happening here, and you're sort of saying, okay, so my earth tendency is that I want to really please everyone, but I actually know that that pattern is not helpful, and it's not helpful for the other person also, because it's taking away their opportunity to grow. And so I come into water, I let it all go, and I just be with what's here, what's needed in the moment, and then I allow whatever element needs to come to come. And that for me is the spiritual path. It's the path of acknowledging our humanity and the patterns that are in us, but also in a way working with them and transcending them to go further. And so, like, I would love, and we can go into earth, we can go into metal, we can go into water a bit more detail, but just to address this point of when we're seekers, when we're looking to really grow and learn, um, how does this model help us advance spiritually in domains like, when we look at the Eastern traditions, they're a lot about transcending self, going beyond the body, going beyond the mind, letting it all go, realizing that we are ultimately the Tao, we are ultimately the capital S self, whatever language you want to use. And so teachings like Advaita Vedanta just emphasize that, cut everything, drop it all, and just go straight to that and just live there, live from that place. And so how do you see the 5 archetypes fitting into that, I guess, evolution that we have, the physical to the emotional to the mental to the spiritual?
Well, for me, what it did was it made it all super practical, because I also, as a seeker, I went after meditation, and I went after different healers. I went for Reiki. I did all these things to try to figure it out, and was left inspired but still pissed at my kids for not getting up on time and still annoyed about whatever in the world. Like, I would go have a great experience with my teacher or my healer, but nothing made its way into my body. Into my world, into my day-to-day world. And so what 5 Archetypes does is it transforms those tiny little everyday lived real practical moments into elevated states by telling you the one thing that is in the way, rather than these broad statements of go into your deeper selves, go transcend. Like, what does that mean when my boss is yelling at me? And so just like we just did with you, what is transcendence according to this Chinese medicine model? It's in the tiny little moments when your partner asks you for a massage and you're freaking exhausted. It's being able to face the fear, the very real fear that she might reject me if I say no, but I'm really tired and I need a chill right now. Those are these tiny little doorways of eruption into integral conscious states that you've just opened a tsunami of beauty out into the field because you overcame the impulse to stay in your ego state, and they happen all day long. So I think for me, 5 Archetypes was just, it totally simplified the whole big, scary, I don't know how to do that story because I'm not a monk up in Tibet.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I'm so passionate about this, and I absolutely love your answer because I feel like that is actually what the real grist for the mill is. These tiny little moments always. And as I grow more in my own path, I realize that everything is spiritual. Everything, the most mundane things, and like it's almost like reality is constantly mirroring back to you where your next step is. And there's something about your method which allows you to tell the truth in a productive way. Because I think often we don't actually perceive the truth of the situation because we think, oh, I'm so annoyed with her for asking that again. But that's not actually true. It's true. Is like what's more true is like I have been overindulging on my earth and I'm depleted because of it. And I feel that if I don't respond positively to this, it's going to upset her. And I can't stand when other people are upset. So it's just easier for me to just squash my own feeling and to do this. And if you verbalize that, actually, then the other person will go, oh, well, okay, well, like, let's work on it. And then that's growth. That's real embodied spiritual growth. And so, yeah, thank you for that answer and for creating a map for us to do this. And I'm conscious about all the other people who are not fire or not earth, and they're not really resonating with that, but they're kind of feeling maybe they're more wood, metal, and water. Could you go into the 3 of those in a bit more depth for people who are curious but haven't quite felt that earth or fire was them?
Yeah, so I'll give some of those like specific examples. Kind of
Yes.
like what we just did. And what you just gave was so perfect because you're right, it does help us be more truthful, which brings people closer together faster. Because it's not about me being mean to you because I don't love your feet. It's just about, wow, my work in this world is to overcome my overgiving earth quality, because in the past I've been doing this over earthing, which is not authentic to my truth. And then all of a sudden, like, how close does that bring two people? Right? And fast. And it's just beautiful. I love the way that you connected those dots. So let's see. So we've done let's do water. So the emotion that is connected to the water element is fear. And when a primary water is feeling insecure or unstable, they're not getting good sleep, they're not eating good food, they don't have great connections with people, and they're just feeling uncomfortable, they are at risk for having a fear of fear, which is really paranoia, and believing that they shouldn't have to have fear. So they can't tolerate fear, rather than saying like, okay, I'm having some fear. Let me just sit with that, take a walk, move on. But instead, when they're not feeling their best, they can overbelieve fear. It turns into paranoia. The behavior becomes isolation, because they can't tolerate too much socializing. But the experience other people have is like, wow, that person's being very secretive, and it feels very intimidating. And so what happens in that space is that the water that wants to be seen as powerful and wise has created the conditions for relationships to lose all potency. Like, it's just it's gone because you disappeared. And so they create the very thing they're most afraid of, which is seeming power, other people not understanding them or feeling like they're not powerful or wise. Now, I have data from the past 12 years of people taking the questionnaire, and most people, 75% of people have lowest water, and only 5% of people have highest water. So this is hard for many people to understand feeling this way, especially if water is your lowest. Then we have wood. So wood, when it's feeling insecure, it can't tolerate the presence of anger. And so what will happen is primary woods will blame others for causing their anger, and they'll very quickly go into resentment. And in that space, they can begin to become passive aggressive. And the display we all see is that they get seething. They're like that's like coming out of them. You could see the heat coming off of them. And the experience they have and everyone else has is a feeling of injustice. Like, that wood person is so angry at me, thinks I did something. I feel like an injustice has been done to me because he became a bully. But that seething, mad primary wood that couldn't tolerate people not liking their plan feels like everyone did an injustice to them by not following their plan. So it's this like self-fulfilling that can be stopped by recognizing that it's okay to feel anger and no one did it to you. Like, go take a walk, Then we have metal. We have to do metal real quick. So metal is at risk for not being able to tolerate the presence of grief. And grief is anything that should be different. I wish it was how it used to be. It's not always like the grief of losing someone. It's the grief of things not being the way they want, the way they used to be. And the toxic emotion that comes up there becomes disdain, and they find the fatal flaw in everything. They begin to pontificate. And what people experience is, snide, and they feel insulted because the metal will over focus on what's right, and it's not you. It's me. I'm the one who's right. And so people will feel insulted, and the metal person will feel insulted. And so the fix for metal becomes tolerating the presence of grief and knowing that times change. Everything changes, and it's okay to grieve the loss of how things used to be for a minute, but use the knowledge that you gained from that past to inform a beautiful, better future, rather than holding on, gripping that past. So that's a little bit about.
Yeah, I
Each
can
one.
I can see those aspects of myself as well. I'm really starting to understand what you mean by we all have them. And I can remember times in my life where I've been in those places negatively, and I can also see the strengths that some of those things give me. As I think, as you get older and you mature a bit more, if you keep learning and growing, you uncover different aspects of yourself. Like, recently, I've been doing a lot of practical work, which I was always told I wasn't good at and probably wasn't good at when I was younger. But being able to reclaim that aspect of myself and actually physically do things in the world has actually been very healing. Like, it's brought up a lot of it's brought up a lot of frustration also, and a lot of self-judgment, but it's actually been very healing to work through. And so, like, I love this message of balance. And I can't help but wonder, as you're speaking and to your clinical practice, how much do you think of the modern diagnosis scenario that we're in now, with people getting diagnosed with ADHD, getting diagnosed with all these things, different mental health challenges? And like, I'm a psychologist by training as well. It's like all these different mental health and things, issues that we label people with. How much of this stuff do you feel is simply just out of balance, five archetypes work? And what's that experience been like in your own clinical practice?
Well, my training has been in Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine. Both systems are systems models that are systems of balance, that are relationships rather than the things themselves. So the things would be the diagnosis, like labeling things. So in Chinese medicine and in Ayurvedic medicine, these Eastern practices, they'll take your pulse, they'll look at your tongue, they'll look at your aura, and they're going to notice what element is overused and which ones are underused. And so sometimes the symptoms might be, I can't sleep at night, or I can't focus. But the question then, they'll go into the process of, give me an example of a time when you couldn't focus. And then all of a sudden, it becomes a much more enriched conversation where you see like, oh, this person can't focus after 5 o'clock at night on days when they didn't have coffee in the morning and their boss yelled at them. But this person can focus after 5 o'clock at night when they're in the country with their kids for the weekend. So then you start to see like, what are the environmental and natural, like the five elements factors at play when they focus and when they don't. And then you start to be able to replicate the patterns of when you can focus in the distraction times of the day by acupuncture, by, there are different ways that I teach people how to do this. So I was never taught the diagnosis model of the Western way of saying whether someone has something. And I believe for sure there's so much I don't know on that end. And there are probably a lot of problems, illnesses, diagnoses that really need attention and are, you can't just leave them. But I do also believe that there are things that can be addressed using, five elements or Ayurveda that are currently kind of boxed into a label or a diagnosis, that are maybe more mild if we asked a few more layers of questions and categorized the actual symptoms in the context of certain environments when they really happen. We can start to see like, oh, hold on a minute, there's little subtle levers we can pull, because you're not always ADD. When you're in, when the neighbor's playing their music really loud, you got ADD.
Yeah, I think it opens up a whole new lens on all of these, and because that's the insight that I'm having is how when I'm in balance, and I feel my archetypes are balanced and I'm calm, like my brain operates very differently. And when I'm out of balance, like that, the mind is jumping from all sorts of places and I can't focus. And I would have observed different people in my family and friends, the same thing. It's like it's a very different conversation from this lens, because you're looking at it completely integrated, from the food they eat to the physicality to their emotional states, their mental states, their spiritual well-being. And you're really seeing, okay, what are the symptoms a sign of? Which deeper patterns are they a sign of? And when you start to observe that in yourself and in relationships, I think it transforms what's possible, because it's so incredible what you can heal and change and grow, and how much you will improve when you start to work on yourself. And one of the parts of your book which I love the most was your very concrete descriptions of what it takes to work on yourself. And I think this is not well enough discussed. I mean, you mentioned things like, what does it mean to really observe yourself? Taking a kind of a seeker's mindset to every day, every moment, and then showing up for yourself over time. Could you share some of those core principles that you sort of instill in the people you work with, and also follow yourself, to make sure that, like, hey, this is what really doing the work looks like and feels like from an inner experience?
Well, I like to go into the subtle things like you and I just discussed, like the foot rub. Like we sometimes come to these like healy feely conversations with these big overarching, I don't know what my purpose is. Or I wanna, gosh, what is it? What is it called when you open your
Yeah, I want to
kundalini?
have a
Like
Kundalini awakening.
right?
Yeah.
I for
Yeah.
Right. Like people want these big, magnanimous things to change. And they believe that a spiritual awakening is this huge thing. And I think maybe part of the problem is that we have a misconception about what we're going for, because then it's impossible. Who can do that? But what's so possible is you saying, sometimes I get really ticked off when I'm tired and I don't want to give a foot rub. That's the brilliance. So as far as like really observing yourself, what I might say to you, because now I know your primary is earth. So your work is observing the potential for earth primary thoughts. Is like, for example, pay attention to moments during the day when someone comes to you and says, "Ugh, I left my grocery bag in the grocery store." And you have an urge to say, "I'll go get it." Notice that you have the urge and stay silent. That's your work. That's the whole kit and caboodle, because you're now staying in integrity and you're injecting integrity into the field, to the collective field. And when you inject that into the field, your relationships elevate in consciousness. You're giving everyone around you the capacity to strengthen themselves also and come into center. Now all of a sudden, the person you were gonna, let's say you offered that person to go back. Now that person goes into, oh my God, now I feel really bad because I didn't mean to. I just meant to complain. Now I owe him something. Damn it. So then, like, there's this wonky thing that just lives and oozes. And so the idea of observing the self is like, for me, for fire, I need to, and it's happening right now, I need to observe moments when I use my hands too much. That's for some people, it's totally distracting. For me, it's what I do when I kind of get nervous sometimes. And it can be totally distracting. Now I'm being really, I'm sitting on my hands. But I can create in the field discomfort, because you might be saying, oh my God, I have to edit out all these hand movements she's making for this past hour. This is going to look ridiculous. It's not going to match the rest of my podcasts. Right? And I'm creating discomfort for you when all I did was not be aware of the subtle behaviors that my fire is at risk for putting into the field when I want to feel more comfortable than I feel right now. And so it's these tiny little, each element, when we know our primary, these tiny little things to be aware of.
Yeah. That's such a subtle point, and as an earth, I have to let you know your hand gestures are absolutely fine. Don't worry about them. And because what you're pointing to here is actually, to me, a subtle and powerful spiritual method, which is just observing the impulses that you have, fear-based impulses you have to control, and just actually allowing reality to continue without acting on them. There's something very cathartic. It's very subtle, because it's like, for our Western mind, it seems like, well, I'm not doing anything to fix it. But actually, if you just let things happen that you're super afraid of, and just stay present and be with it, whatever's in you that's holding on to it has the opportunity to come up and let it go, actually. And I reference this in my own practice as like keeping your heart open no matter what, like actually feeling your heart tense and relax, or maybe it's your solar plexus, and then just relaxing it and just allowing whatever the thing is that you're terrified of, just literally allow it to happen, and then go, I'm still here. And just that little practice is so cleansing. And when you start to do this, right, in relationship, Carey, like when you start to change how you're showing up and suddenly you're not being that person who's always, making everything okay for everyone. And I'm imagining it can be quite hard on relationships. People start changing. Why are you not doing this? Why are you not doing that? Do you not love me anymore? And they start to either try and pull you back into it or make it mean something. How do you navigate this change in yourself, and particularly in relationship to others?
Well, if I think about my own experience, I would say people like me
Okay.
more. when I don't show up and overdo fire. I didn't realize that fire can be annoying, because from this vantage point, fire's fun. We're the life of the party. We entertain you. We bring you joy. We light up your life. And when I learned that, like, oh, maybe I should dial that down to a 5 and just be the candle in the room rather than the wildfire burning it all down, all of a sudden my relationships actually came into balance. That was the harmonization. All of a sudden everything was like, oh God, it's just easy. I don't have to work so hard. I don't have to do anything. I wait to be spoken to. What would that feel like? That's kind of cool. And it's like, I just gained back a bunch of energy and time and peace. So I'm not going from it's not like I was a binge smoker and all of a sudden I stopped smoking and all my smoky buddies were like, come on, Carey, you're no fun anymore. That's a different story. I mean, not that I did that, but like that's a different idea. But yeah, sometimes when you do elevate your consciousness and you choose not to gossip, let's say, gossip is an easier one. You choose, I'm not engaging in gossip anymore. We are sometimes faced with all the friends at the office and the water cooler are talking about the newest gossip. And I used to participate and they're like, oh, come on, Carey, it's fun. So one of the things that, we go into that fire questioning is like, am I going to say yes so that I don't have to feel uncomfortable in this moment? Or am I going to do the harder thing in the moment that creates more integrity in the unit, in the entire unit? Because maybe, even though it's uncomfortable for me, I might inspire someone in that small group to say, oh, you know what? Maybe I don't need to gossip. And it doesn't have to be in your face kind of no. It could also be something like, oh, I forgot I'm late for a meeting. You don't have to like throw it in their face that they're gossiping and you're not. There are lovely, gentle ways to not participate in something that was not the conscious level you wanted to anymore.
Do you know what? I actually find that a very hopeful and inspiring message, because I think one of the biggest fears that we have around changing is that, and letting go of some of these patterns. I speak as an earth here. It's like, if I stop being all that for other people, they're not going to like me more. They're not going to that's my value. And actually what you're pointing to is that if you just balance yourself and come into more of your authentic way, it's good for you. It's also good for them. And even if it's hard at the start, it's really powerful because it's more true, it's more authentic, and it allows them the opportunity to come to their authenticity, because they're depending on you. Let's say you're keeping earth. They're depending on you to regulate their emotions, and they need to learn to regulate their own emotions. And when they regulate their own emotions, then their life is better. And so you're actually not helping them. And I think that's important realization to help with the guilt, or any of these things. Like, and particularly if, let's say, you have friend groups that you now no longer hang around with because you're changing, that's okay. And then they'll have different friends who they're changing, and they're friends. That's all okay. It's like, I think the hopeful thing is we don't have to live a life out of alignment with our authentic self. That's not what we're meant to be doing. There's no moral obligation there. It's not actually morally correct to lie in any shape or form. And so I love that. Yeah. Would you like to add something there?
Yeah. Yeah. And you make such an interesting and important point in the 5 archetypes. When our primary, you have the limited perception, the illusion that you're keeping relationships together by helping people. It's only 1/5 of the story. You're only thinking with your stomach. I'm only thinking with my heart when I think I need to bring you joy. But what happens is when you overuse this perception that I only have friends because I help, actually what's happening in the other elements, wood and water, they want agency. When you offer them to help, they get annoyed and they're like, dude, does he think I don't know how to take care of myself? And they actually get annoyed. And they're like, oh, how quickly can I get away from that? Fire, when Earth tries to help, Fire's going like, oh my gosh, we have to slow down and talk about this. I just wanted to complain for a second. And Metal is like, just get precise. Don't tell me a whole story. Like, why are you helping? We're just, just focus. One thing. Let's move on. But Earth is in the mindset, in the illusion. Each one of us is in our primary, presents a really strong illusion that who we are, what we're delivering attached to our primary is the reason people love us. And it's actually the opposite. So if you come in at a 10, you're making everyone, you're creating the potential, the conditions for abandonment. So you go through that whole, you overgive, people don't sympathize, you get disgusted, you over-ingratiate, complain, and then the abandonment happens. And so there's, each one of us, if we don't harmonize and come into center, we think our primary is our personality, is who we are, and that it's good.
Yeah, that's beautifully put. And you make that point a number of times in the book that this is not your personality. There's something different here. Could you share a bit about on that for anyone who's sort of thinking, well, this just sounds a bit like personality typing or...
Yeah. So if you would see it as maybe mental acupuncture, so you wouldn't go to an acupuncturist thinking that he's going to tell you your personality, right? An acupuncturist is reading what's out of balance and treating it to return it to balance so that you have a strong mental and physical immune system so that you can be strong in the face of chaos. Like whatever comes your way, you're solid. So this is just mental acupuncture. So your questionnaire results are the same as your pulses. It's just telling me what needs to be returned to balance and how to get you there. It's your treatment plan so that you don't overuse one element and underuse other ones. Because if you do that, imagine it's the same as like if your stomach decided it was going to be the king of the universe and it overdid everything. All of your other organs would be like, oh my God, I can't function. There's something, they go out of whack. So they all have to contribute equally in balance or else a piece of us falls apart. So yeah, so I know it's funny. It can feel like a personality, but it's really just your treatment plan. It just shows you how do I go back into balance so none of these are out of whack. It just shows you what you're most out of whack in so that and what to do about it.
Yeah, thank you for that. I wanted to speak to you a little bit more macro now, because one of the things you said to me that you're most excited about is this transition from what you called collapsing mental consciousness to integral consciousness, like on a global level. And I'm wondering how you see almost like our purpose here in this lifetime, our purpose as a species, this evolution piece that you're talking about. And I'm wondering what your perspective is on this global consciousness shift or our individual leveling up of consciousness, and yeah, your reflections on kind of what is happening on the earth right now, and why are we here as souls in this journey in the first place, and yeah, what's the bigger picture here, from your understanding?
So basically, you're just asking like a really light
That's what this
question here.
podcast is all about. Super light, never deep,
Yeah.
just a bit of fun. Yeah, a bit of gossip.
Oh my. All right, let's see. Let's go there. So something else about me is I'm an intuitive. I've been had psychic capacities my whole life, and so I feel like tapping in a little bit in order to get a clearer answer. Um, so the answer that's coming through is that we are here as the bridge generation. They're actually showing me kind of like a ladder where we're pulling people up by bridging this gap. That there's just a feeling of knowing, like, you're listening to some of these people who are telling us like something else is happening. There's a big transition. There's something, but we're still stuck and mired in these places of our feelings and our frustrations and the day-to-day muck. And how do I achieve higher consciousness and enlightenment? And there's just a gap. So what I'm being shown is that we are here to bridge that. Um, so this idea, if we go back into integral consciousness and the collapse of the mental stage, that is the philosophy of a philosopher named Jean Gebser, who died in 1972, 73. And he wrote a book called The Ever-Present Origin, where he studied the evolution of human consciousness phases throughout the history of time. And he identified archaic, magic, mythic, mental, which we're in now, and then moving into integral. And he talks about these phases of conscious states having their efficient stage. When they come in, they're amazing. They're working great. But eventually they fizzle out and they go into their deficient state, where if we don't move into something else, things just fall apart. They just stop working. And he also said that at each change in conscious state, we erupt into the new state. That it's not a process, that it's an instant shift. It's a tiny adjustment in the way we relate to our perception of reality in moment to moment times, like foot massages. um, and so I think we are here to be the ushers in of integral consciousness, which is, some of the behaviors of integral consciousness are letting go of taking perspective, of having, differences, of thinking I'm wrong and you're right, or I'm right and you're wrong, but rather holding all perspectives, dignifying the humanity of everyone, just being still in the face of someone else's opinion, not taking it personally, just having that space of like, oh, you don't like black jackets, okay, whatever, it doesn't mean anything. And then there's another quality, the interconnectedness of all things, where this idea of I am not separate from you. And so if you look at it from the 5 archetypes perspective, if I overuse my fire, I cause pain in 80% of the room without saying a word, just by using too many hand gestures or laughing too much or smiling at inappropriate moments. And so that creates this discomfort in the field between us, where other people in the room start to feel uncomfortable and then have to do something to create more comfort, which may lack integrity. And then they're putting that into the field. So there's this idea of all this interconnectedness. Another major component of integral is letting go of our current limited perspective of time and space. And instead of being slaves to the clock and believing that all there is like the stuff of here, the things I can feel and touch, really letting go and sitting back into being present. Being, and a lot of wisdom teachers talk about being present. And he wasn't one of the, like, he wasn't a yogi, he wasn't a guru. He was he was a philosopher. And he was seeing the collapse of the mental stage in the 1940s. And he's like, we've got to erupt into integral. We've got to do this. And, based on his work, we are still living out what was happening in the United States in the 40s. Like, we haven't erupted yet. So why we're here? I think we're like the emergency management team.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And those three areas, like the appreciation of interconnectedness, the real, the ability to, I would say, to connect to our deeper essence of who we are. It's almost like, if I was going to put a framework around it, would be to say, on the ultimate level, there is the Tao, the light of all things, the source of all things, the formless in Hindu, the that which exists outside space, outside time, the gestalt of everything. And then as it comes down into form, we have this like individual soul, and we're here in this experience, and we're with this human like, who has these different archetypes and like has different challenges and different conditionings. And it's like we've come into form from the formless to participate in this incredible dance that we're in, and that we all have a unique way of our participation. And so the waking up to that we're a human being, but we're also so much more, is so beautifully articulated by you there, and such a beautiful part of life. And I think that if we're going to look at the shift between like mental and integral, it's like that understanding of ourselves as more, and that the physical stuff around me, in some ways, like, it doesn't actually matter at all, really. And that all that this human life is being the best human you can be, as you've described, and embodying that so much, but bringing that source light, that soul, into our human experience, and following what lights us up, and being authentic, and observing ourselves, and all these beautiful qualities. Like, that's the purpose. Because when you said, why are we here? Each individual is here to do this work, because no one can do it for you. If you don't start understanding your 5 archetypes, if you don't start transcending and working and loving yourself and others more, then as far as you're concerned, none of this global shift is happening. There is nothing happening. You're still in the same world that you always were. And you're still every morning getting up and worrying about what's in your bank account. And I speak of my own experience. What's in my bank account? If this person likes me or not? What do I have to do today? And you're in that horrible place of continuous lack that can never be filled. And so it's one of the reasons why I love the 5 archetypes and the work that you're doing, is that you're giving us practical maps. Like say the ladder has been dropped down, right, into this reality for us to get a foot on the rung. If we can just get a foot on the rung in this reality, then we can continue. And you're providing those ladders and those maps. And it's work that I'm really passionate about doing myself also, in different soul alignment method and different things I work with. But I feel like what you've articulated is the only real game in town. And so, yeah, thank you for being a part of it, and for sharing your wisdom here today, for making it practical, and for people, for doing the work yourself. Is there anything else you'd like to add on that, or anything you'd like to share that you haven't discussed?
I would say I would just double down on those who know there's something more, know there's something they could be doing, and believe that the only answer is some grandiose awakening that they have no idea what that is or how it's going to come, that the diamonds are in the tiny moments every day when you pull back from having a big reaction, where you just stay still instead of pushing. That's where you've prevented a whole ripple effect of everyone now having a whole negative, toxic, thing happening. So I would say focus on the little things, and then all of a sudden everything is enriched. Everything starts to change. You have so much more space open up because you're not having these big reactions. Then all of a sudden the world things just one day you wake up and you're like, wait a minute, so much beauty is here.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think it's very easy to imagine that there's going to be some huge revelation that's going to fix everything. And even for those who have those huge revelations, those huge mystical experiences, something like 76% of, I think it was Americans, when they were asked, have had that experience. They've had a huge awakening experience or something transcendent. But certainly 3/4 of people are not enlightened, right? And so it's like, how do you take what you're shown, whether that's through psychedelics or through an experience or even through reading about something, and go, wait a minute, how do I embody this now, this understanding in every cell, in every fiber of my body? Like, how do I recognize the beauty of this human experience and then see that little interaction with my partner as like, that was it right there, and then how do I embody integral consciousness in that moment and hold it no matter what, when everything material that I ever built and I thought was important is burning to the ground and I'm just there and I'm like, yes, this is exactly what's supposed to happen right now, It's a beautiful offering, and I think for me, it's the only game in town. So, yeah, thank you. For people who want to connect with your work more, and I got a lot of value out of doing the questionnaire and reading the book, where would you point people and on how to connect?
Yeah, I would say go to carriedavidson.com and take the questionnaire. It's free. I think it's fun. You get some feedback afterwards. I have a YouTube channel where I do these one-on-one sessions with people and take their scores, their 5 element scores, and solve problems with them quickly. So you can run through and see they're separated out by element. So you can see if your primary is wood, go watch how we use someone's scores to solve a wood problem or a metal problem. And I think that you can learn so much from a very little exposure of 5 elements and start just focusing, noticing, like, when do you get upset that your partner wants a massage when you're tired, and just be in that moment and see what it feels like to say, I'm tired. Can we do something else instead? And that's the eruption. That's it.
I love it. Thank you so much. And thanks for coming on the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit subscribe wherever you're watching and check out some more of our stuff as well. Because if you like the energy of this, you'll like the rest as well. So thank you very much. And Kerry, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.